The Krake Raken, or as most people call it, the Kraken, is often considered the gold standard of modern balisongs. But getting one custom built exactly how you want it can cost you well over $200. And if you don't want to spend that, is there another way to get a similar experience? While you could scroll balisong market on Instagram or Reddit posts hoping to find your Kraken build on the secondhand market, again hoping that it'll be a good price, there is another way, and that's where the Nabalis Hydra comes in. The Hydra's blade and handle geometry fits closely with the Krake Raken to where you can use the blade on the set of handles, and this is commonly called the Hydraken. And so in today's video, I'm going to be building my very own Hydraken. Now the goal is partially to be a good flipper, and partially just to be a really cool build that I like. And so to this video, I'm gonna make that happen. And starting off with the Hydra portion of the Hydraken, I have here the Hydra blade and the hardware from Nabalis. Now this blade comes in at $30. I got the Bowie blade, as you can see, and it looks pretty nice. I'm really excited to get it on the handles, which I have right here. Now I got these handles. These are Blemished handles. They are inked, which means that they have the inked Zen pins, and they are speed channeled. Which of course the speed channeling does add just a touch of silver. Really all I have to do for this build is just tune the bushings, and then I can assemble the knife. And then in addition to that, I do want to just take a little bit of the black off the edge. I'm not planning on sharpening it, but a blackened blade looks a little bit weird without that silver on it, because a normal sharp blade would have that silver. And I think just a touch of silver on the blade would also complement the touch of silver on the speed channel handle. Now as for this blade, it looks really good. This is just a normal blade. But the handles are, of course, blemishes, and you can see there's just a slight bit of discoloration at the end right there. But really, everywhere else looks fine. I don't even see any problems with this handle. This is a really good deal on getting a set of handles this way. Okay, so I have my digital micrometer here. So what I'm going to use to measure the blade and the bushings. This is the Nabalis Hydra hardware kit. I did also get some Squid Industries bushings, but I don't think I'll need these. These are just in case. They were out of the Squid hardware, which I would have gotten, but I'm curious on how well the Nabalis Hydra hardware will work. Now I'm not going to get too much detail with the tuning, but I am going to use this micrometer and basically measure the insides and the outsides of both holes in the blade, and then as well as the bushings. And that'll make it easier as I'm sanding it down. I just have some 1500 grit sandpaper. So here I am getting a baseline measurement on the bushings, and it's actually really close already to where they need to be, so I decided to just try and fit everything together and see how it looks so far. Okay, these washers seem very thick. Now it's looking like it's going to be a tight fit, if it fits at all. These washers seem a little too thick. This doesn't look like it's gonna fit. Yeah, it's definitely not gonna fit. Do I have to sand down these washers? I was not expecting that. This micrometer is not meant to do the inside distance, but I'm just going to eyeball it. It's pretty close. So it seems like 4.48 millimeters. And the combined thickness of everything together is 4.803 millimeters, which means that there's a total of 0.323 millimeters extra thickness in these washers. That's that much material that I need to remove on the washers. Definitely doable. Kind of annoying, but I am going to do that as opposed to looking for thinner washers, just to make sure that if you want to follow along and make this build, you can do it with just buying the Nabalis Hydra blade and the Kraken handle. So let's get to sanding. Oh, and the hard part with this is I do want to make sure that I sand the same amount of material on both of these washers. Like, it would be bad just to sand one of the washers down, because that would make it very uneven. Okay, this is taking forever. It's a lot harder to hold than a bushing. I think I need higher grit sandpaper, otherwise this is just gonna take absolutely forever. This took a ridiculous amount of time. I started with 320 grit and went up to 220, and then eventually took out the 80 grit sandpaper, and even then it just took forever to sand through this. I really do not recommend sanding your washers down like this. I'll show you a better way in just a second, but even then, just avoid this if you can. Though from what I can tell, it does work, so there's that. Okay, this is ridiculous. My finger really hurts because I've basically been sanding it down, because as I push down on the washer, my finger is being sanded. I'm gonna try and figure out a better way to do this. I do have an idea. What if instead of moving the washer, I move the sandpaper? Much more comfortable. I was rotating it while I was sanding to keep it even, hopefully. They're both actually really close. I'm just gonna hit them both with the 1500 grit. It's close. I definitely have to make them both a little bit smaller. Okay, so I've done a lot of sanding and I was able to finally put the blade in with the washers and the bushing and check out this swing. There's no pivot in there. And it's not going anywhere. It is still, the washers are just barely able to fit. And there's a lot of play in the blade. But no tap. But I think I should just take the washers down just a bit because they are really tight. And then I'll smooth them out with the 1500 grit. And I guess it's time to tune that bushing. So let's get into that. Well, it looks like the Hydra hardware does not fit inside the Krake Raken. So I'm gonna get some squid hardware. I looked, and apparently on Squid Industries knife website, not the trainer one, the hardware's in stock. So I'm gonna pick up the pair of that and see you in 5 to 10 business days. Or rather, right now. Oh look, squid hardware. Yeah, I got that in and I have installed it, and I also just took the bushing down another like 0.00, I think 2 millimeters. Still a little bit of play though. Okay, I just took a little bit more off and I oiled it just to see how, because you know the oil can sometimes reduce play. So you can see it definitely moves around a lot. I'm worried about going too much. I'm gonna try doing the other handle and put it all the way together and see how it feels before I go any further on this one. Okay, I put it together and there's about just as much play on that side as there is on this side. Honestly, probably a little bit more here. But also look at that handle gap. That is a little concerning. It's pretty close. And then the closed handle gap is huge. So kind of want to make the Zen cups a little bit, take them in a little bit just because that handle gap is so big. But I probably won't because I don't want to ruin the coating on the blade, although it will wear away eventually. Okay, so I oiled it and I think I'm going to, while there is decent amount of play, I think I'm going to leave it as is now, simply because if I do like a horizontal swing test, it's pretty good. But there's just the slightest bit of, I could feel it kind of catching. I really don't want to go too far. I guess as it breaks in, it would be less sticky, but I can always tune it more later. But the next step is I'm going to add just a silver line on the blade. I already kind of messed up and started taking away some of the coating there, so I'm just gonna put some tape on it. There we go. It's hard to tell. You can kind of see it in the camera. Already looks a lot better. Like down and then following the curve seems to be working. I had to put more tape here because it was sanding through the tape. It's hard to tell on camera. You can kind of see towards the edge. It's already starting to look better. Oh yeah, it definitely looks a lot better. Now it's time to do the other side. But yeah, it definitely is not difficult to remove it. It takes quite a few passes, which is nice because I'm definitely not sharpening this at all. It is just taking off the coating. Oh yeah, that looks a lot better. I also noticed on this, you can see the tip, I've just started to get the back side of it. So on this side, when I get towards the tip, I'm trying to really lift it way up so I'm not getting the back side of it. So this is what I have so far, and it's not very wide. As you can see, I have a couple of other blades with blackened blades. These are actual knives, so you can see the amount of silver on the edge is a lot thicker, But obviously with an actual blade, you're gonna really grind down the material to get that edge, versus this, you can kind of see it. I think I'm starting to like wear away a lot thicker on the blade. So I don't want to actually sharpen it. I also don't want to remove a lot of the coating. So I'm probably just going to stop here. I feel like it, you can still see that it has that silver, but it's not risking taking off more coating than I want. So I'm pretty happy with that. So we got this thing pretty much all tuned up and it looks good. Let's go see how it flips. Hold on, before we do that, let's get some nice close-ups. Okay, so here it is. And let's give it some flips. Okay, so I have flipped it a little bit. I did assemble it all the way last night, because I was just excited to put it together and I just wanted to see how, just double check just to make sure that the hardware would fit and everything would work. And I also flipped it for a minute or two just to test the tune, just to make sure that nothing was, sticking, just to make sure that the handles were swinging well before I stopped tuning it for now. But this is my first time really flipping it, and especially now that it's all put together. Let's get a sound test. Like I said, there could definitely be some more play tuned out of it, so it could be a bit better in that regard. But I really just didn't want to get the tune messed up. So, yeah. Anyway, let's see how it flips. So, yeah, it's kind of funny, I wanted to make this video and show off what it's like to build a Hydraken, but I also am not going to be like the best person to compare this to a Kraken because I don't own a Kraken. So this isn't really like how does it compare to the regular Kraken? Although I only need a blade to compare it to a regular speed channel Kraken. But either way, I can talk about what I think about how this Hydraken, speed channeled Bowie Hydraken, flips. And I could say, so far, I like it. I think that it is definitely going to take more time, have to spend more time with it to really understand how it fits in. But it definitely feels well balanced and also on the lighter side because it is, speed channeled. Honestly, the thinness of the handle gap when it's opened is going to take a minute to get used to for some tricks, just because they're so close together. But I don't dislike it. Like even doing that reverse C choker, I have to adjust it a little bit because if it's out further, it falls away easier. But like I'm kind of gripping it almost too much. But some adjustment like that, I'll be just fine. But yeah, I like the speed channel ring. I don't really remember what I said in the intro of recording this video because that was quite a few days ago now. But I did choose the Bowie because, firstly, I just like how the Hydra Bowie looks. That kind of like harpoon Bowie. I think it looks really cool. But also because I got the handles speed channeled, I think the Bowie would work better than the Japanese Tanto, just because it has a little bit less tip weight. Once again, this was not really because I really wanted a Kraken, because if I were to get a Kraken, I think I'd probably just get a Tanto Kraken and no speed channels. Just kind of have that as like my baseline Kraken. But this was more so about making a fun build and getting to document the process. And yeah, I really like how this turned out. It's got its quirks. It's got that huge open handle gap. a really small closed handle gap. Now, as far as it carries its balance, how its weight and momentum, I think it definitely has a good amount of momentum at the ends of the handles. I think the speed channels, of course, they definitely move the weight distribution out towards the end of the handles, but it also doesn't feel like super end weighted, which is nice. Let's see, how do chaplains fare? Yeah, chaplains are really good, really sticky. I definitely think that I'm going to really enjoy flipping this balisong more and more as I kind of get used to it. I feel like it's almost like, which, now that I think about it, it makes sense, but it's kind of, when I first started flipping it, there wasn't anything super surprising about it, like, oh yeah, that feels super unique or different. But as I'm flipping it, it just feels like a really solid performer, which, that makes sense. That's kind of what the Kraken is, right? Of course, this is a fair bit different, has some uniqueness to it. It's got the speed channels and it's got the Hydra blade, which is different. But I think this is going to be a really solid performer, just really consistent flipper in my collection, which is cool because I do like that. I do not think that's boring. Personally, I like having a balisong where I can just expect what it does and I can just, flip with it. So, and that's another thing. The glossy handles feel really comfortable. The Kraken handles, feel great. Even like the jimping it's good, substantial. Okay, kind of lost my train of thought. Just be warned, if you are gonna get one of these Hydra blades, while they are not sharp, they are still fairly pointy. Okay, this is the next day and I've spent quite a bit of time flipping it and getting used to it, and I just wanted to share a couple of things that I either forgot to or just wanted to emphasize. So the first thing is the comfort. I might have mentioned it briefly, but the handles themselves, the Kraken handles, they're very glossy and very comfortable. They are square but nice and rounded, and yeah, the finish in the hand just feels really comfortable, but also has a lot of grip, and then the texture on the faces is very noticeable, but also still very comfortable. So that's great. And the blade as well, it has a nice rounded spine. It also has that same kind of like glossy finish feeling. So it really does feel cohesive and also very comfortable. What is less so is the blade transitions from a nice rounding to right about here. It's hard to see on camera, but it's a very harsh angle. I think it's like a 90-degree angle right here. So that is definitely a lot less comfortable, but it's really only noticeable like if you do spine grabs like that. But other than that, it's very comfortable. So also, I just wanted to say, I am really enjoying just the flipping on this thing. The balance and the weight distribution is just really good. I like it very much. Another thing is I am slowly continuing the tuning process. I did take the bushings down a little bit, but the reason I haven't continued going is because, so you can see, it binds just ever so slightly. Because even if I just do the horizontal test like that, it looks fine. And of course, the swing like that is just fine. Really in flipping, I have no issues with it. But it's just something that I just want to be careful of because I don't want to over tighten it. So that's just why I'm just kind of tuning it up slowly. Because I don't really have a lot of experience with tuning, so I just don't want to mess it up. So overall, would I recommend that you build a Hydraken? Well, I could say that it definitely has a little bit of jank to it. From the open gap being so small and the closed gap being so big, that discrepancy is just kind of weird. That and the fact that you do have to tune it yourself, so that the tune will vary on how well you're able to tune it, but also it is you're combining these two different balisongs together, so it might not fit totally the best in regards with the tune, though I think it does have some pretty good potential. But overall, I'd say from a performance standpoint, I think it performs really well as a flipper. So I would say, yeah, I think you could totally go for the Hydraken. I know I am really pleased with how this one turned out. I think, I really accomplished the goal that I was setting out to do because this is a really cool looking balisong. So yeah, when you combine the looks with how it flips, it definitely is a nice competitive flipper. It really is consistent, and I think the more that I flip it, the more I will get used to it and just enjoy it even more. So I think that it's totally worth doing, but it's also kind of a build that doesn't make sense. It's in the fact that, you know, it's kind of like a Kraken, but not really. Like, you're never gonna have like the true Kraken experience, in the sense that, what is one of the advantages of the Kraken? Yes, it's the consistency, which I think that this offers, but it's also the ubiquity of it. You know, if you, so many flippers have a Kraken. I mean, I don't. And by Kraken, I mean like an actual full Kraken, where it's like you can compare things to the Kraken. And so it kind of gives you like that frame of reference, which obviously, you know, I kind of have that, but not really, because I have a Hydra blade on it. But that's of course also difficult because, you know, even with the Kraken, when you factor in the 5 blade shapes, all the different versions of the handles, and whether or not they're speed channeled or not, then yeah, there's a lot of different variations of the Kraken. So everyone's experience with it is going to be different. But then also, I think a large reason why people might make a Hydraken is because, you know, you get the Kraken experience, but for cheaper. You know, I went for these Blemished handles, which are 30 a piece, plus the hardware is like 8 plus shipping, and then the blade is 30. That is definitely a lot cheaper than a Kraken. But then when you also add in the speed channels, that's another $40. And so for that's now, it comes in more than a Hydra. So if you were to just buy a Hydra, man, they're on sale now for like $100. The blemishes are like 88 and the trainer's like 89, just around or under $100. And I've heard people say that like the Hydra is really good, and, you know, has that like good performant, consistent kind of feel as the regular Kraken. So if your whole goal is to just get a, you know, a consistent performant flipper, and, you know, that's why you want to make a Hydraken, you could argue that you could just go for a Hydra, and then you wouldn't have to deal with building it all yourself. It has been a couple of weeks before I last recorded anything for this video, and I have been editing the video because I thought I pretty much had everything, but there's just a couple things that I have learned or didn't emphasize enough that I wanted to speak about here. The first being that this tip is very pointy. It's very thin and pretty sharp, not like on this edge, but the back edge. Just beware of the point. I may grind it down a lot more. I just didn't want to mess with the look of it, but we'll see. Another thing about the Hydraken that I've noticed, and it's kind of changed over time. Initially, it was behaving very much like, I think Pez Flips did a video on, it might have been like the Nautilus Live Blade clone, but he was saying how like the handles, depending on like the open test or like the ice pick test, would sound good, but then the close would sound kind of dead. And then if you like squeeze the handles closed, then it would sound better. And then also like vice versa. And that is like basically exactly what my Hydraken was doing, but it since has like kind of changed a little bit, because I really don't get like a dead ice pick sound. I think it does affect it. Sounds pretty good, but when I squeeze it, now it sounds louder and better. So yeah, it definitely does affect it. So, but still the closing just sounds like a little bit weird. And you can see like this is what the handle gap looks like, but I'm gonna squeeze it. It has gone close, a little bit closer together. And additionally, you can do that with the open. So that's just like a little bit weird. I'm assuming it's something to do with the hardware and handled geometry just not being, you know, made exactly for this blade. But for whatever reason, it's just a little bit weird. The handle gap is like already large, but it's even larger. And then you can squeeze it and it goes smaller. Super weird, and doesn't really affect flipping or anything. It's just a weird like feel in the hand kind of thing. And I don't really know exactly why it's like that, or if there'd be any way to fix it with the Hydraken, but kind of weird. But yeah, so it's just like, it's inconsistent with, I guess, how good it sounds and feels in the hand. So, you know, that's like a little bit disappointing, but it doesn't affect the flipping at all, so that's good. And another thing that has since changed is I was recently watching Pez Flips' video on his experience with getting his Tsunami modded, and he mentioned that one of the mods that he requested and had done was a polishing of the pivot area, and that had me thinking, because when I had taken this apart, after I had flipped it a while, I noticed that the coating where the washers was starting to wear away. And so I thought maybe like this coating was adding to the binding, or if I were to just polish it off and get it, the pivot area to be a little bit more smooth, maybe that would just make the handles just swing a little bit better. And so I took some high grit sandpaper. I have like some sandpaper on some drums, so I was able to, like these little sanding wheel drums for my Dremel. So I was able to just use that just by hand to really carefully take away some of that coating. And you can see here, that's what it looks like after I had finished. And that did seem to help noticeably with the tune. I'm not sure as much if it necessarily helped the tolerances, but it did help the swing because there's like still a little bit of binding with the horizontal test, but it definitely has helped it out a little bit. So that was something that, at least if you were going to get the blackened blade, you might want to do.
Overall, I really like the final build, but it's not perfect. I love the Kraken handles. They are super comfortable, have great grip, look great, and the speed channels are a nice touch. I really like the blade too. It looks great, it's very comfortable where it's most important, though it could be a bit more comfortable at the top third of the blade. Now as far as how the blade and handles work together, flipping wise, it's just about perfect. I have no glaring issues for things that I wish would be changed. Chaplins are incredibly sticky, rollovers are good as well. As for fans, I wouldn't say this build is made for fanning. I could see how some people would want better fan performance, but for me, I have no problems with it. Though I'm also used to a handle bias with less tip weight, and I don't need a balisong to excel at fans for me to be just fine throwing fans into my combos. And if you really do like to fan, you could always just go with the Japanese Tanto Hydra blade shape instead, as the added tip weight would help. And for all other tricks, aerials, ladders, parabolics, and all of those, they all work really well too. I've got no problems. As for the balance and weight distribution, it's neither a light nor heavy balisong. It weighs 4.06 ounces, or 115 grams, at least on my scale, and it carries enough weight at the ends of the handles, but not so much where I would say it's a defining feature of the balance profile. It's more similar to my Sirius V4 than my Squid Trainer V4 in that respect. So as for the flipping, in short, I love it. It's really consistent, there's no surprises with its performance, just like a Kraken should be. There's really only two things that slightly take away from the flipping experience for me, but both are related with the build quality and fit and finish, so I'll cover that now. The first, which is avoidable, but comes with this being a balisong you have to tune yourself, is that I'm still just getting a little bit of binding on the handles. It's just a tiny amount, and it has gone down a lot since I polished the pivot areas. I think it will continue to go down as it breaks in, but it's just one of those things that when I'm flipping and the handle doesn't behave exactly as it should, it just throws me off and the balisong flies out of my hand, which just lowers the overall experience. Of course, if you're better at tuning bushings than I am, you might not have any issues. For me, it's just nice to have had this experience to get better at tuning. But if you're just hoping for it to come together really easily without any hiccups, you're better off buying a complete balisong. The other issue with the Hydraken is the handle gap. The closed gap is a bit big for my liking, but doesn't affect the flipping performance and will diminish a bit over time on its own as I flip, but I could also speed that up if I really wanted to. But the open gap is just so small and nothing could be done to fix it. It will get a little smaller over time, I would imagine, hopefully not too much though. But as it is now, it takes some time adjusting to get used to it with certain tricks like the Z-choker and tweak fan, but it isn't a deal breaker for me. And finally, it doesn't affect the flipping at all, but does change the overall quality and feel in the hand. And that's just the weird issue with the closing, like the ice pick sound test feeling changing depending on how the handles are squeezed. It's just kind of weird. I don't really know why it's like that. It's not a big issue at all, but especially combined with the weird handle gap sizes, it really reminds me that this build is a combination of parts from two different balisongs from two different companies. Overall, I'm really happy with how this Hydraken turned out. Let me know in the comments if you've built one before and how it went, and if it ended up different at all from mine, or if you're planning on making one in the future, what configuration you're planning on doing. As I hinted early in the video, I do have everything but a blade to make another Kraken. So if you have a spare blade, especially a V3 trainer or a Bowie blade that you want to sell to me, please reach out. And when I have all that put together, I'm sure I'll make a video about it and compare it to this Hydraken. So when that's out, you can watch it right here. Or until then, if you have not yet learned this opening, you've got to check out this tutorial next. Thanks for watching.